Hello, you're watching Global Insight with me, Woo Young. Here from Arirang News Center in Seoul, we connect with experts from around the world on issues making headlines. Do 5G networks and smartphone apps developed by Chinese companies threaten national security? Relations between the US and China have never been straightforward, especially in recent years, as the two countries have been engaged in geopolitical rivalry and a trade war. But a new battleground has emerged in tech, as America has sought to ban Chinese technology and even apps for young people like TikTok, citing possible security breaches. And it looks like the UK and India are also withdrawing from using Chinese tech amid geopolitical concerns. Now, to discuss the complexity of tech and international relations, we have joining us today Dr. Harwit, Professor of Asian Studies at the University of Hawaii, Dr. David R. Hanke, partner at Arent LLP, and Dr. Mark Shanahan, Associate Professor of Politics at the University of Reading. Well, my first question to you, Dr. Harwit, we're going to start with State Secretary Mike Pompeo's remarks from just a few hours ago, announcing that the US will impose visa restrictions on Chinese technology firms, including Huawei, citing their support for the Chinese Communist Party, which allegedly carries out surveillance on their people as well as human rights abuses against minorities. Now, the US has also hit out against Chinese apps like WeChat and TikTok. So, Dr. Harwit, what do you make of this series of actions against Chinese tech?
Well, this is just another series of ratcheting up pressure on Chinese tech companies. In May of this year, perhaps the most severe sanctions that the U.S. Put on Chinese tech companies were the restrictions of sales of software and other technologies to Huawei. So we see that this is just another step in the U.S. government trying to make it more difficult for Chinese tech firms like Huawei or TikTok to have a presence in the U.S. market, mainly over security concerns, but also, as you said, over the Chinese government repression of rights of many of their people, especially in the northwest province of Xinjiang, where Muslim people had seen their rights suppressed over the last couple of years.
So multiple reasons for taking such actions. Well, Dr. Hanke, what's your view on this? Do you think we have a legitimate reason to be suspicious of Chinese technology, especially with the US presidential election coming up in November?
The playbook that was used by the Russians in 2016, I think, was closely studied by other countries, including China. And the U.S. intelligence agencies have publicly testified that China is one of those countries that has paid close attention. There's a documented pattern of election interference, in fact, by China with recent elections in Taiwan. Certainly, the political protests that occurred in Hong Kong before the recent actions, there was interference there as well, and also some activity in Australia. So this would not be the first time. So I think that the U.S. government's paying very close attention.
The UK announced that it won't be adopting Huawei's 5G technology after all. And now this is the complete opposite position that the UK government had as even a few months ago, even amid controversy. So, Dr. Shanahan, why do you think there has been such a drastic change of heart?
This is very much a U-turn by the British government, and it's politically driven. The United Kingdom is now outside of the European Union and is looking for allies and is leaning very heavily towards the United States. Donald Trump today was fanfaring the success that he felt was personally due to him and his intervention in getting the UK to withdraw Huawei from our 5G infrastructure that's being built. The UK companies will not be able to buy Huawei products after the end of this year, and all components will be withdrawn by the end of 2027. The UK needs friends. It needs a big trade deal with the United States. I think we're looking at a little bit of a digital Berlin Wall being built here, that you either go one side of it for the US or you go the other side towards China. And the UK seems to have made its decision to follow the Trump administration.
And do you think the UK is making the right decision, Dr. Shanahan? I mean, what is the risk of having China's 5G network installed across Britain?
Well, there does seem to be a security risk that our own GCHQ pointed out long before Prime Minister Johnson's rather bullish comments some months ago that Huawei should be kept in, and also before Theresa May also endorsed Huawei. Our spies, our security infrastructure are very, very concerned that this 5G network that Huawei was involved in building would give them backdoor access to UK data, which could be used in the kind of warfare that might emerge in the future, or is already emerging, which is much more driven by cyber than it is going to be the engagement of troops against each other.
And Dr. Harwit, I want to know your view on this. Do you think Britain is making the best choice, and how do you think Beijing will react?
Well, obviously the Chinese are unhappy about losing market share, especially in the advanced country like the UK. This could cascade into losing other markets in other parts of Europe. Germany has already said that they're going to go with 5G, but they might consider it in light of the British decision. So the Chinese see this as another part of the economic warfare or tech warfare, I think, that they see developing between the United States and China. As for Britain's decision, part of it was made, the British have even said, because of the U.S. sanctions imposed in May, so that made it harder for them to guarantee their security, the security of the Huawei equipment. Overall, though, as Dr. Shanahan said, though, I think we're going to see this division between two worlds of 5G technology, and I think that's not a very good development going forward. I think if one could find ways to trust the Chinese and to cooperate with companies like Huawei, the global telecommunication system would develop so that everybody can enjoy all the bells and whistles that are available or going to be available from the 5G technology.
Well, Dr. Hanke, would you agree with that? Do you think there should be some way to cooperate with the Chinese, or do you think there is a bigger risk to doing that?
Well, the U.S. government certainly perceives significant risks, and of course, Huawei is not just on the business end of U.S. sanctions, such as being put on the entity list, which restricts their access to dual-use technologies. They've also been indicted criminally by 2 different courts in the United States. So the U.S. government has very significant concerns. I'm not sure that that there's a way forward in terms of cooperation. I think the UK has made a sensible policy choice. I think what was just described as far as this being sort of a concern over the supply and the reliability and the quality of Huawei going forward due to the actions the U.S. government took towards companies that indeed make things for Huawei. I think that's a very real concern. Counterintelligence remains a very serious concern. Is Huawei infrastructure going to be used for espionage, in fact? But I think just the quality of the equipment going forward, the reliability, the ability to be state-of-the-art, keep up with Western companies and Scandinavian countries, and in fact Korean companies that make competitive 5G gear.
Well, Dr. Shanahan, these days it hasn't been just Huawei or network equipment. It's also been about communication apps like TikTok or WeChat. And now TikTok has been used as a popular app among the younger generation, but now the platform has raised serious national security concerns in the US as it's owned by a Chinese tech company. Now, the demographic that tends to use TikTok is rather young, and they're based in Western democracies. Does this worry you?
I think what's worrying is the lack of transparency, both in the technology itself. I mean, nobody quite understands the algorithm and how TikTok has just become so massive so quickly. But it is also the difference between the way that supposedly private Chinese companies relate to the government. Every Chinese company has a branch of the Communist Party within it. And again, could this be a Trojan horse into Western democracies, enabling the gathering of data from all of its users? If that data is passed to the Chinese government, it's a very, very powerful resource for them. So yes, I think we should be worried about this lack of transparency around the apps and around the companies that make them.
Well, Dr. Hanke, Chinese firms the tech firms have always insisted that their data data is kept outside of China. But then Chinese lawmakers have recently drafted a data security law that might require companies to share information with the Chinese government on their network security in operations outside of China as well. What does this mean for tech companies and their users?
Well, I think I've not read the finer points of the new data security law, but I think the extraterritorial application of this law is somewhat unprecedented, and I think it raises a lot of concerns. It's China trying to use the size of its market and the draw of foreign companies making money there to essentially force them to do things they otherwise would not do. I think there's a certain irony there in terms of what China's trying to do and what the United States and other countries do not do. I think it's a very real problem. I think it's going to affect the willingness and the interests of Western companies and other foreign companies to do business in China going forward. I think this is an example of Chinese overreach that they may regret in the future.
And Dr. Harwit, do you think we should be particularly cautious about Chinese-owned technology compared to other apps or devices or wireless equipment?
Well, I would say for TikTok, maybe one of the biggest problems is young people watching too many lip-syncing videos and cute animals and spending 3 hours without blinking. But putting that aside, I think that almost any kind of app, even the Western ones, are going to be taking information from our personal data. Also, TikTok has separated itself as much as they could from the Chinese entity. They're still owned by a Chinese company, ByteDance, but they recently hired Kevin Mayer away from Disney, and so they've done as much as they could, I think, to try to show that they're not a threat to U.S. security. One last point, the U.S. government has talked about banning TikTok. I think that would probably raise some First Amendment rights here in the U.S. and companies like Apple and Google, which have TikTok on their app stores, would probably object very vehemently. So I think that the talk of banning TikTok is mainly to scare Chinese companies, to add to this ratcheting up of pressure against Chinese tech companies. But I think in the case of TikTok, it's not going to come about.
And Dr. Harwit, as US-China relations continue to sour and their tech war continues, do you see any actions of retaliation coming from Beijing?
Well, of course, the China already bans most Western apps. Twitter, Facebook, all of those are banned. I think it could be that American companies will face more sanctions. Germany, in fact, is afraid that if they start to follow the examples of the U.S. and the British, that their car companies might be facing sanctions in China. So I think most major multinational corporations are afraid that if we have this continued tit-for-tat escalation, that many other companies on both sides are going to be affected.
And Dr. Hanke, as the rivalry intensifies between the US and China, how do you think, why is it so important that for both of them to win this competition in emerging technologies like 5G and artificial intelligence? And who do you think is leading the race at the moment?
I think in 5G, to be honest, I believe the United States is not winning. Huawei has made great strides forward, and I think the United States really has lacked a sort of national leader in terms of telecom infrastructure. So I think that on that one, the Chinese are winning. Artificial intelligence, I would defer to the experts on that, but certainly there are areas where the Chinese are quite excellent, arguably the best in the world. There are areas where the United States is doing things no one else can do. I think that really there's a lot of symbolism here in terms of the emerging technology race, and it is that, a technology race. I think there's a struggle to see who's going to be the superpower, whether they're going to be multiple, who's going to be the sort of technological leader of the next century, and it's playing out before our very eyes.
And Dr. Shanahan, before we go, you spoke about the possibility of a digital Berlin Wall. How do you see international relations between Western democracies and China playing out over the coming weeks and months?
Well, a lot of this will be played out in the course of the American presidential election. While Donald Trump continues to look for existential threats, to look for enemies that he can other, China will always be one of those. China has talked about the UK facing pain, that it should suffer pain as a result of the decisions made to remove Huawei. Things are really quite bad, and they may well escalate. We've had a lot of noisy and sharp rhetoric from both sides. Let's just hope it stays at rhetoric and doesn't become any more painful than it needs to.
Well, I'm sure it's been very painful for the younger TikTok users, but I'm sure we can all expect to see these tensions escalate over technology in the coming weeks and months. We'll have to wrap up the discussion here, I'm afraid, but it's been wonderful to hear all your insights on this. That was Dr. Eric Harwit at the University of Hawaii, Dr. David Hanke at Arent Fox LLP, and Dr. Mark Shanahan at the University of Reading. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Join us at the same time tomorrow for more global insights on issues making headlines. Till then, have a great day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.